Greetings from New York. I am Nathalis Wamba. I am a professor at Queens College of the City University of New York. And I'm very grateful to be invited to say a few words at this conference. And the title of my presentation is School Leadership and Change. I will give you first an overview of the presentation so that as we proceed with the PowerPoint, you can follow what I'm saying. I'd like to talk first about the concept of leadership. What's the meaning of leadership? What are the assumptions that we have of leadership? And when we speak about leadership, where do we put the context, which is a significant element when you are addressing matters of leadership? And then I would like to talk about leadership, change, and agency. When we talk about leaders as change agents, what does that mean? What are the prerequisites for a leader to be a change agent? Somebody bring about good change, good things in the lives of people. We're talking about positive type of change and not negative types of change, although that also can be some form of leadership, because we have seen examples in the history of what is negative type of leadership. So those are the elements that I like to address in this presentation. And with the PowerPoint, you'll see the structure that I'm following and what I'm saying. So if you will bear with me, let me begin by sharing my screen with you. So here we are. So the first concept, the first idea that we like to address here is the concept of leadership. What is leadership? There are several definitions of the concept of leadership, but what I like best is the quote by Ralph Stokehill, who said there are almost as many definitions of leadership as there are persons who have attempted to define the concept. So that says it all. And if that's the way we conceive of leadership, if this is the way we understand what leadership is about, then it means it is a concept that we're not able to grasp. There's the second quote by Burns: the most studied phenomenon and less accessible to the earth. It means it's very, very difficult to grasp the concept of leadership. And yet, we all think that we understand what leadership is all about, because when we say leader, we have a picture in mind of who a leader is or who a leader is supposed to be. So there are several assumptions that we make about leadership. First is that leadership is something that is static, something that does not move. You have to have certain quality to become a leader. Some of the quality are qualities of people that are born with them. So they're natural leaders, they're born leaders, or other people are made leaders. So we have all types of ideas about the notion of leadership. And also we have come to believe that leadership can be taught. So that is another assumption that we make. And we also frankly believe that there is an objective evidence that if we train people in leadership skills or management skills, that they can become leaders. So that's another assumption. We assume that it can be learned quickly and easily. And more important, we think that one form of leadership can be taught to several individuals. And that's the reason we have, for example, programs in educational leadership in colleges and institutes, centers, etc. But in all that thing, we also have come to believe dangerously that the context is not that important. It's one of the assumptions that once you have the skill, you are just about able to address issues in any context. So that is something that is difficult. So because of those assumptions, we have created what we call the leadership complex industry. It means we have all types of institute, all types of school where people are selling leadership skills, and those institutes make a great deal of money. There are trainings, there are webinars, there are workshops, there are courses, there are sessions, there are conferences when people can go and learn about being a leader. That's what I call the leadership complex industry complex. And when you look at clearly in these institutions and try to see what is taught or what the courses are, it's hard not to think that the courses that are being offered are at the level of management. Really, they're giving organizational courses, they're putting people in internships, and the point is that we're teaching people management and we expect them to be leaders. And that is one of the contradictions that is inherent, because to design really a curriculum of leader, when you start, I understand it's not difficult. It's very difficult, I'm sorry. It is very difficult, it's very challenging. How do you prepare people to be, for example, creative, innovative, and imaginative? Do we have course on creativity? Do we have course in imagination? Do we have course in innovation? And it's not only those, but there are also other skills that we need to also put in place to understand exactly what is taking place. So the content of the training, as we say, it's either management or leadership. Management because we fall very much in the cult of efficiency. Leadership is something that is innovative, but it's something that we have still difficulty articulating truly what is leadership, in fact, and how do we prepare people to become leaders? We have assumed that all those things are easy, and yet they are not, because when a student graduates from your university for your program, they're not leader. Your student graduates as graduates. Unlike students that graduate from medical school that are medical doctor or law school that are lawyer, in educational leadership, you have to hit the road and prove who you are and bring about change, lead people, then you'll be confirmed a leader. Otherwise, you're not a leader yet. So that is a challenge of management and leadership, and a challenge in the definition equally. Now, if we're to talk about school leadership, talking about agency and change, what are we talking about here? When you talk about school, you're talking about people. And if you're talking about people, you're talking about culture. If you're talking about people and culture, you're talking about a way to proceed, planning. And all of that has to happen in a given structure. And that's very, very important to understand. As an agent, as so-called leader, if you choose that word, you bring to the institution, to the school, your knowledge, what you have learned and what you know. You bring to school your skills, what you can do. And you bring to school also your disposition. What are your values? What you think is good? What is your morality? What kind of person you are? This is what you bring to school as assets. And then there is a change. How to proceed with change? To begin with change, the first thing is to observe. That's as simple as that. You cannot just take into an institution and begin changing because you don't know what the institution is. You don't know what the culture is. You want to understand us, although it takes time to learn the culture, but you have to force yourself to understand some of the basics. You inquire, you begin to really analyze and try to understand the issue. And once you get to that point, then you act. So it takes time to be a change agent, and change in itself takes time. So to be an agent of change really means to presence. Is the old idea of presencing. That is an idea that was developed by Skarmer. And I like that idea because one of the things he was able to grasp is the fact that you have to train people to deal with the future. We have trained people to deal with the past, because what we have done in research is look at the former leaders, look at what they have done, and try to communicate that to the students. Yes, it is good to learn from the past, but if we go towards the future, we are better off learning about the future. If you are a traveler, you have to know where you're going. And unfortunately, in most of our training program, we always teach people about what was happening in the past. And that's part of the research, that we have no ability, we struggle to predict the future, and that we're presencing the ability to be present and to understand what is happening. That's really what I like about the concept of Skarmer. I think that's where, and to be that type of leader, to be an agent of change, it requires the following: an open mind, the ability to look at things from a different perspective. Is like doing research. For those of you who have been doing research, we can look at the same phenomenon, but look at it from different perspective. Looking, for example, at a car accident. If you're a police officer, what are you looking for? If you're a lawyer, what are you looking for? If you're just a bystander, what are you looking for? So the ability to be able at 360-degree vision of the situation, looking at various angles and be able to address those. You must have an open heart, because you cannot only lead with your knowledge, you have to lead with your heart. It's very, very important. How do you relate to people? That's where the concept of emotional intelligence comes to play. How do you interact with other people? What intelligence do you have beyond your intellectual intelligence? And then open will. How do you want to be authentic? What do you like to engage in? What would you like to do in order to make things better? So those are some of the prerequisites. And then there are several ways in which change can occur. There is no prescription that you have to do this and this will happen. You have to always have the ability to read your context, in which context you are operating, because there are contexts that allow you to be a leader, and there are contexts that will keep you at the management level. For example, if you step into a good school that is functioning very well, the tendency is to keep things the way they are, because everything is fine, there's no change to be. But you can step into the school and say, I like to make things a little bit better than what they are. But often our human tendency are such that simply, let's not rock the boat, let's keep the things the way they are. So far, so good. And there are other contexts when the school is really challenged in difficulty, and then you have to move it to another level of efficiency. And then you have the opportunity to be a leader, to lead people into that direction. Hence, the difference between management and leadership, things that are very, very important. So you can use, for example, an action research model, or a participatory action research model, or an action inquiry model. You can use Stringer, who talks about look, think, and act. Or you can use James and his colleague, who talks about diagnose, act, measure, and reflect. Or you can also use Tolbert, that talked about action and inquiry. So there are several ways in which you can make a change, but you cannot ignore the context within which you are operating, and how the context is either helping you or hindering you to be a true leader when you are working with people. And this is something that is very, very important that you have to keep in mind. And we have had all types of studies in the field of leadership but we have very, very few studies that look at the person of the leader and how the person of the leader has an impact on the school. So that is a subject for another talk, but try to look at the study when we're talking about if, for example, the leader is a female, or the leader is a male, or the leader is a gay, lesbian, or the leader is a Muslim, or a Hindu, or a Christian, or a Jew. How that identity of the leader interacts on the people. How do the people in the school respond to that identity so that he's or she's given permission to lead, or she's not given permission to lead. So those are some of the things that should look. Research in that area is almost non-existent, but there is something to look at. And to just close, I'll have to talk in a few minutes left about what I call the care ethics school leadership, because my fundamental hypothesis is that there is a crisis of care in education, and it is worldwide. The question, do we really care about the education of our children? Do we pay attention to the education of children? Maybe there are places where people do care, but where I'm coming from, I don't think that there is not much care. And COVID has even amplified the crisis of care that we experience, at least in the United States. To be a care ethic leader, you need to begin with inquiry, which is a humble desire to know about others. That's essential. Second, connection. Connection means the ability to put yourself in other people's shoes. Empathy, mutuality, understanding. Essential. You want to give people a positive experience of authority, not a negative experience of authority. Third, action. You want to act, not to hurt. You want to act to promote. And that's what a leader does. That's why some people have talked about servant leadership. That really you help other people become better people. And hopefully by helping people become better people, you yourself will be becoming a better person. So those are some of the thoughts and ideas I had about this presentation. There is more to be said, but I think I have exhausted my time. And again, thank you for listening and hope to talk to you soon.